By this point, it is no longer news that Henry Cavill is out as Superman. Although the news of his departure was met with a lot of pushback and disappointment, everyone had to come to terms with the fact that a new Man of Steel is underway. While fans might have had time to come to terms with the news of a brand new James Gunn lead DC that will see an all-new cast, news about what exactly led to the departure of Cavill as Superman is still coming out. To say that some fans were shocked by the news of Cavill leaving the Man of Steel behind would be a bit of an understatement. It was widely accepted that he would return in the role, and once he made a cameo in Black Adam and posted a video claiming that he was officially back, most fans finally had a reason to celebrate. Sadly, we do now know that it was a short-lived victory, as soon after Cavill announced that he was officially done as the Man of Steel. Since then, though, we have received a bit more inside detail as to what exactly led to his departure, and the story does get a lot more complicated than James Gunn simply not wanting to work with him. It might be easy to simply say that Gunn disrespected Cavill, but the truth of the matter is that Henry Cavill's Superman has been disrespected for years now under the previous leadership. Now, if you want to make the argument that it is not disrespect but rather just underutilization, then fair enough, but the point is that over the last almost 10 years, there have been plenty of missed opportunities. Although Cavill only signed a 3-movie deal with the studio, most thought that this would mean 3 Men of Steel movies. We do now know that not to be the case. Although we were first introduced to Henry Cavill's Superman in 2013, the much requested follow-up movie simply never happened. Plans changed within the studio in order to rush out a Justice League, and as such the sequel turned into a Batman vs Superman that led to a Justice League. While there was still an opportunity to extend Henry's contract, the studio ultimately went in another direction and decided to start the search for a new Superman in 2018. That was until Dwayne Johnson showed up. WB by this point was insistent that they wanted a new Superman, but Johnson was not having any of it, and demanded that Cavill return for the role. Although some executives within the company were against the idea of Cavill returning, Johnson simply went over their heads to pitch his ideas directly to the CEO. Now, a lot has been said about Johnson doing this, as many felt like this was just his way of getting a stronghold within the company and taking over the DCU. Over the last few months, many have accused Johnson of only being in it for himself and using Cavill as a bargaining chip in order to negotiate more movies and work his way into the Justice League. Despite what his motivations were, though, most were just happy to see Henry back as Superman. Ultimately, the pitch from Johnson for multiple Black Adam movies that eventually concluded with him fighting Superman and joining the Justice League was accepted, and with that, we got Cavill back and he made his cameo. James Gunn took over though, and just like that, the plans were now once again dead. Now, there is plenty to unpack here, but before we do, let's just go over this article from Game Rant where they go into this whole thing in a bit more detail. The article is called "Dwayne Johnson Brought Henry Cavill's Superman Back for Black Adam Despite WB Wanting to Recast." And in it they say, Dwayne Johnson was responsible for Henry Cavill's Superman cameo in Black Adam, even though the past regime at Warner Bros. Wanted to recast the character. With James Gunn's announcement of a Superman reboot under Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav, Johnson's desire to do right by fans did not amount to much in the end. Superman hasn't technically been seen on the big screen since the controversial cut of Justice League from 2017, as Zack Snyder's Justice League, the director's true version of the film, released on HBO Max 4 years later. As a result of creative differences between Zack Snyder and the studio and differences between executives internally, Warner Bros. Was sitting on Superman for almost 6 years without any plans to bring him back until Johnson arrived. However, the actor negotiated the Black Adam cameo in a way that didn't sit well with certain top executives. Now, once again, the big question here would be why they sat on Superman for this long without doing anything, and why was so many executives against the idea of continuing with Cavill. Reboots for big superheroes like Batman and Spider-Man are nothing new. We saw it all the time. One day you are playing the superhero and the next day you are being recasted, and they decided to tell the same story all over again. A great example of this is Sony with Spider-Man. One day they were planning on making a 4th Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, and the next day we heard that they were shutting it down in favor of someone else. They cast Andrew Garfield in the role of Spider-Man, with most fans expecting a trilogy. And with almost no notice we get the news that a new Spider-Man is on the way. It is very common for this type of thing to happen, but in the case of Superman, it made no sense for them to sit this long with Cavill and not do anything. His contract did end and technically they did not do anything wrong, but it was still strange as to why some executives were so insistent on bringing in someone new. Game Rant goes on to say here, a Variety article sheds light on the ongoing internal struggles at Warner Bros. Discovery regarding how to best manage the franchise, reportedly through unnamed sources close to the studio. However, those struggles are now orchestrated to revolve around Johnson, as the actor was reported to go around everyone with the intent of pitching a multi-year plan to Zaslav that included Black Adam and a Cavill-led Superman in which the two properties would interweave, setting up a Superman vs. Black Adam showdown. The negotiations were eventually approved by new Warner Bros. Film co-heads Michael DeLuca and Pam Abdy, despite former Warner Bros. Film chief Toby Emmerich wanting another actor for Superman in 2018, which would explain the trajectory of the franchise and lack of Superman content since then. Warner Bros. Did not see eye to eye with Snyder, nor did the studio agree with Johnson's Superman vs. Black Adam plan, which the Variety article blames on diminishing returns. It was previously reported that Emmerich's successor, Walter Hamada, had plans for Superman that involved saving the character for a crisis event. However, 6 years since Justice League, there had been no mention of this plan until after Hamada's departure, which still doesn't explain why Superman couldn't have been used until the alleged plan came to fruition. Once again, we obviously do not know exactly why they never moved forward with more Superman content, but is very strange as to why they wanted to recast. They state here that the previous boss did not want Cavill as Superman and was insistent on a recast. That is the reason why we did not see any more Superman movies. Only after he left were plans approved for Cavill to return. Ultimately, though Toby Emmerich did get his wishes when Gunn was appointed, Cavill was out. This does make you wonder if Gunn's hiring was not conditioned on the stipulation of a new Superman. Considering how extremely popular Cavill is, this whole thing is incredibly strange. Maybe studio heads just simply did not like him. Maybe he actually is hard to work with, as some have suggested when he departed as The Witcher, and maybe it also just came down to money, which is my vote. This is a common tactic that studios use, but in order to save money they will turn to a less experienced actor who they can afford to pay next to nothing. A deal with Cavill would have likely cost them millions, and in order to save they decided to recast. Now, Cavill looks like the type of person who would take less money for a project that he is passionate about, like for example The Witcher. It was reported that he got almost next to nothing for his performance in the show and only agreed to it due to the fact that he was such a big fan. Not that he should have, but he probably would have taken less for Superman as well. It is very strange the way the studio did not make another offer to bring him back. If you look at all the Wonder Woman content they pushed out over a much smaller period of time, it does make you wonder why Superman was left so far behind. Now, a couple of years ago, some executives did put out a statement saying that they wanted to build the DC universe around Batman and make him the leading man, and it is very clear that is what they are doing. Batman has had too many movies to count, and although Affleck never got his own, he did play the lead in 2 other movies. He was a large focus in Batman vs. Superman and the leader of the Justice League, although they never said that he was in the movie. Soon after, they already casted another Batman and a movie was made with a sequel underway. Yet, Superman is still sitting on the shelf and we won't have anything involving him until at least 2026. By that time, we will have 7 more Batman movies and 5 spin-off TV shows. Maybe Cavill is just better off leaving and going somewhere where he will be more appreciated.